idea itself. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember how I said in a previous episode that there are some locals only spots that I would film, but I wouldn't tell you where they are. This is one of them. If you want to see this hidden gem, move. Come up here and become a local yourself. Then we'll show it to you.
Many people around the world dream of returning to the home of their ancestors, the British Isles. At the age of 45, I fulfilled a lifelong ambition and bought my dream home in the Scottish Highlands. My name's Jason, and I live in the far north of Scotland. This is my story. Welcome to the American Highlander. Good morning from the Scottish Highlands. It's another absolutely perfect day, about 18 degrees, mid-September, and it's breezy today, so you might catch some wind noise on the microphone. I know I say it's a perfect day every time, but hello? I mean, look at it. So today, we got some more sightseeing planned, and we're going to answer a question that some of you have been asking in the comments, namely, how safe is it here in the far north? Before we dive into all of that, we do have a couple of housekeeping items to get to. The first bit is something we actually haven't done in a little while, which is channel shout out. In this case, I want to give a shout out to another Scotland-based channel, Simple Scottish Living. This is run by Zach and Annie. And they're in the Central Belt. Zach is Scottish, Annie is American. They both lived in America for a number of years. Actually, not too far from where I was born and raised. And they live in Scotland now. So it's another American trying to integrate into Scotland channel. And they're really great people. What you see in the videos is how they are in person. And I know that because I just met them. They were on their way back from Orkney and they actually stopped here at the house and we had lunch together. So you might see a cameo of me in a future episode on Simple Scottish Living if I make the cut. So, highly recommend them. If you're watching this channel, you're probably already watching Simple Scottish Living, but on the off chance that you're not, give them a look. I think you'll enjoy what they have to offer. Tell them I said hi, by the way. The other bit of housekeeping is I want to give you a heads up on something that I'm currently working on. I'm trying to get this channel to be cost neutral. As you know, I work a full-time day job, and this is a side project on top of that. So, yeah, my average work week is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 82 hours. But it's more the cost that I hadn't really anticipated. I estimate just in fuel, this channel costs me an extra $400 a month. That's, $5,000 a year. And I got this stonking huge mortgage on this house that I'm going to be paying off for the next 20 years. So I'm trying to come up with ways to make this channel at least cost neutral. And ideally, it would be great to be able to pay off my mortgage before I'm a senior citizen. So those are my personal goals. So I'm lining up sponsors. Now, a couple of things about that. First off, if you're a local business, if you're here in Scotland, you're a local business, you will continue to be free. A primary function of this channel is to support local businesses. So if you're a local business here in Scotland and you want me to give you a shout out, just drop me a line and be like, hey man, can you give my business a shout out? Yeah, sure. If you're a paid sponsor, I will only accept paid sponsors on this channel if it's a product or service that I personally would actually use and believe in. And it has to be something that I think my audience, that you watching this, would actually directly benefit from. So that's my assurance to you. You never have to worry about turning on an episode on this channel and seeing me going, it's gambling for minors. No. Also, I will never allow a sponsor to have editorial control over my channel. I am too old and too grumpy to allow someone to dictate what I can and cannot say. So, those are my promises to you. I want to give you a heads up that that's taking place. I'm trying to line that up behind the scenes so that this channel can be cost neutral and keep going. And then ideally reinvest in the channel, get cooler cameras and stuff like that. So, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's say we do some sightseeing. The sun is out. It's a gorgeous day. Let's do this. It's time to be alive. One of the things I sometimes think about is I wonder what some of the people I used to know, how they're doing, how their lives have gone. Sometimes I wish, when I'm on long drives like this, that I could magically summon up an old friend, an old coworker,
just ask them, how did your life turn out? You know, have an honest, real conversation. Not a desire to rekindle a friendship. You know, in most cases, one of the things you learn as you get older is that you really only truly emotionally connect with a few people in the course of an entire lifetime. So for most people, I wouldn't necessarily want to try to rekindle a friendship because there just isn't enough there. But almost as a postscript to bring closure to that story thread, just to know, how are they doing? How did their lives turn out? I mean, yeah, you can see glimpses of it on social media. But let's face it, social media is, to a large extent, a false window. Because people usually try to make themselves look better than they actually are. It's something I think about a lot simply because you get into the second half of your life and you realize that you're probably not going to meet as many new people as you met when you were younger. And the number of people that you have met that you will never see again, friends, family members, co-workers, lovers, that list grows to a substantial number by the time you're in your mid-40s. So on these long drives, sometimes I think to myself, what would it be like if so-and-so were sitting next to me and I could have one last chat, one last conversation, and then wish them well. Well, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you've read about Westeros. Here we're in Westeros. This is the northwestern end of Rossshire. We're pretty close to Ullapool, and it is stunning up here. I mean, if you told me this was Middle Earth, or Narnia, or Ferelden, I'd absolutely believe it. The scenery here, honestly, it reinvigorates the soul. It really does. You've got to see this for yourself. You've got to come here and see this. For God's sake. The far north is one of the most amazing places on earth. And we're on its doorstep here. Let's talk personal safety. So this is one of the questions that I get asked quite a lot, namely, how safe is it here in the far north of Scotland? And the answer is very safe. Keep in mind, crime can happen anywhere. As long as there have been human beings, there's been crime. But at the same time, having people around is kind of a prerequisite for crime to take place. And, well, there just aren't that many people up here. That's one of the reasons why I chose to move to the far north, is it's one of the most sparsely populated areas in all of Europe. So, getting away from lots of humanity is usually a decent step to take. I don't mean to make light of the situation, because crime can happen to anyone, anywhere. But the numbers don't lie. I'll put some stats up here on the screen for you to take a look at, contrasting the Highlands versus where I was living, which was London. Predictably, you stack that many human beings on top of each other in an urban center, and things are going to get messy in very short order. So I understand why this question exists, because it seems like, you know, you turn on the news and you see the headlines, and you know, I wonder if this is how Roman citizens felt towards the end of the empire, when the Goths were being allowed to cross the Danube. And anyway, suffice to say, I understand that major cities are a necessity as hubs of commerce and industry, but that doesn't mean that I'm obliged to live in one, especially if I have the means to get out. And you start looking around and going, okay, where can I go to get out of the line of fire? Where can I go where my family and I can be safe and just away from the headlines, away from the noise pollution, away from the constant barrage of lights, just away from it all. And that's why I chose to be up here. This is one of the most remote places you can be and still have access to enough of the modern world and its amenities to earn a living. So, in terms of crime, the worst thing that you'll probably be exposed to up here is, I don't know, theft of agricultural equipment. I mean, seriously, it's pretty minor up here. And again, it can happen to anyone at any time, but, you know, I've been in street fights more than once. I've been mugged. And, you know, when these things happen to you repeatedly, you start looking around and going, okay, what am I going to do about this? And my choice was to get as far away from humanity as possible. Because I believe that humans are not meant to live like insects in these concrete anthills where we're stacked atop each other. That's not how we're meant to exist. So you may feel differently. When I was born, a third of the human race was urbanized. Today it's over half. And by the year 2050, it's estimated it'll be 2/3 of humanity that's urbanized. And that's scary to me. That's no way to live, at least in my view. Now, there are other trade-offs that can affect personal safety.
Another one is road conditions. The A9 is known as the spine of Scotland. And it is, statistically speaking, one of the most dangerous roads in Scotland. There are traffic fatalities here on a more frequent basis than I think anyone really wishes were the case. And it's easy to see why. There's lots of blind curves and traffic pullouts, and you get queues of cars behind a slow-moving vehicle or bicyclists or something like that, and somebody gets impatient and they make an unsafe passing maneuver, and you can kind of see how that plays out. So that is a factor if you're up here. But again, everything is relative. I would vastly prefer the worst day on the A9 versus what my everyday commute looked like when I lived in LA and I had to do the 405-101 interchange. If I never see that particular nightmare again, I will die a happy man. The other factor which can affect personal safety is climatology. Climate change means that you have a spectrum of conditions for what's sort of normal weather, and that spectrum widens. You get more extreme weather events, both hot and cold. I mean, the UK just a few years ago had its first 40-degree summer in recorded history. I was here for that. It was not fun. But most of the questions that I get pertain to the opposite, which is winter. How brutal can the winters get? And the data doesn't lie. The data has made it very clear that winters up here are getting milder, particularly over the last 10 years. This is corroborated by what all the locals that I've spoken to have said, as well as my own personal observations. Because remember, I moved up here last winter. There was barely a fortnight of snow, and frankly, conditions here were roughly equivalent to what you would expect in, say, the Pacific Northwest in the US. Now, there are trade-offs with this. For instance, ticks don't die off as easily in warmer conditions, so you would see an increase in Lyme disease. In addition to that, the risk of drought increases dramatically. The risk of fire increases dramatically. And storm surges in low-lying coastal communities. These are very real factors. But on the flip side, you also don't get severe, crushing, prolonged blizzard winter events, which means that it's easier to traverse roads, easier to get to emergency services like Regmore and Inverness for anything truly serious. These are all factors to weigh out if you're thinking about, well, is this a place where I want to live? Nowhere on the earth is perfect. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I think something like only 2% of the entire US has a climate that favorable. But it's also a tectonically active area that has fires. So everything's a trade-off. I looked around and made a very conscious decision to come up here to the far north of the Highlands. It's the call of home. It's been a drive in me to live here ever since I was a child. But I also looked at it rationally and came to the conclusion that all things being what they are, this is a really good place to be for anything that might happen. Anyway, enough on this rather heavy subject. Why don't we go check in and see what Annabelle was up to? All right, that's enough from Annabelle. Let's get back to the sightseeing. I've got something special I want to show you.